Jack Wilson froze mid-step, medical kit clutched against his chest, as the lioness's amber eyes locked onto his. Blood-soaked grass surrounded her massive form, her sides heaving with labored breaths that had continued for 48 hours without result. Not a suicide mission, a birth intervention. "Jack, don't!" Eleanor's voice crackled through the radio at his hip as the male lion's warning growl rumbled from the nearby brush. Atlas's black-streaked mane appeared between the acacia trees, muscles tensed beneath golden fur, scorched by the merciless Serengeti sun. Martha Wilson's trembling fingers pressed against her Florida nursing home window, 5,000 miles away, watching her son on the live stream Dr. Thompson had secretly activated. The same determined expression he'd worn at 7 when he'd rescued that mangy neighborhood cat, despite the scratches that had required 12 stitches. "Lord, let me save one this time," Jack whispered, taking another step forward. How much more could one man lose before the universe decided he'd paid enough? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. The Serengeti stretched before Jack like a golden sea, its vast grasslands parched from 3 months without rain. 6 years as a ranger had taught him the rhythm of this place, how morning light painted the savanna in amber hues, how afternoon heat drove all but the most desperate creatures to shade, how evening brought the hushed anticipation of the hunt. But this season had broken all patterns. The drought had forced animals to cluster around dwindling water sources, making them easy targets for predators, both animal and human. Jack lowered his binoculars, wiping sweat from his brow. At 38, the lines around his eyes had deepened, not just from squinting into the African sun, but from the weight of memories he couldn't outrun. His weathered Jeep, parked beneath an acacia tree, held all the essentials: medical supplies, tracking equipment, and photographs of the faces that haunted his dreams. "Base to Wilson, come in." The radio crackled with Eleanor Thompson's voice. "Wilson here," Jack responded, his Tennessee drawl still present despite years abroad. "Nathan wants you back at headquarters. Those lion tracks you reported yesterday, they match our database for the pair that migrated from Masai Mara." Jack's pulse quickened. "The ones with the distinctive male, black streak in his mane? That's them. And Jack, the female appears pregnant." 5,000 miles away, Martha Wilson adjusted her reading glasses, squinting at the iPad screen balanced on her lap. The Florida nursing home's air conditioning hummed too loudly, drowning out the bird song from the courtyard. At 79, Martha had outlived her husband by 16 years and had nearly outlived her relationship with her only son. "Mrs. Wilson, are you watching those animal videos again?" Nurse Patel smiled, adjusting Martha's pillows. "That's my son," Martha said, pointing to a man on the screen who appeared as a tiny figure against the vastness of the African plains. "He doesn't know I follow the park's live feeds." "Your son works in Africa? How exciting!" Martha's smile held both pride and regret. "We haven't spoken properly in nearly a decade. Not since Sarah and little Emma." Her voice trailed off. Back at Serengeti headquarters, Nathan Reynolds studied the map where Jack had marked the lion sightings. At 45, the African-American park director commanded respect with his military bearing, a remnant of his years in Iraq. His dark eyes held the watchfulness of someone who had seen too much. "These lions are special," Nathan said as Jack entered. "The female, they call her Serena in the Mara records. She's the last of a bloodline that's shown unusual intelligence. Researchers have been tracking her for years." Eleanor Thompson looked up from her microscope. Harvard-educated with a reputation that had preceded her to Africa, the 35-year-old veterinarian had given up a prestigious American position to work in conservation. "And now we have Richard Blackwood arriving tomorrow," she added, her tone suggesting this wasn't good news. "The photographer?" Jack asked. "Photographer, conservationist, and major donor," Nathan clarified. His documentary series has brought millions to conservation efforts. What Nathan didn't say, what none of them knew yet, was that Richard Blackwood's cameras often served purposes beyond conservation. The abandoned ranger station sat like a forgotten sentinel on the eastern edge of the park, its metal roof warped from years of sun exposure. Jack cut the Jeep's engine, letting silence settle around him as he scanned the perimeter. Ellie's equipment rattled in the back seat as she shifted to get a better view through her binoculars. "There," she whispered, pointing toward a cluster of acacia trees. By the dried riverbed, Jack adjusted his focus. Two tawny shapes rested in dappled shade, the male's distinctive black-streaked mane unmistakable even at this distance. The female lay on her side, her swollen belly rising and falling with labored breaths. "Definitely our pair from Masai Mara," Jack confirmed. "Atlas and Serena." Ellie nodded, already pulling out her tablet to record observations. "She's further along than I expected. Third trimester by the look of it." They watched in reverent silence as Atlas rose, stretched, and circled protectively around his mate. Years of poaching had decimated lion populations throughout Africa. A successful birth here, especially from this bloodline, would be significant for conservation efforts. "There's something familiar about her," Jack murmured, a memory tugging at the edges of his consciousness. He focused his binoculars on the lioness, noticing the distinctive notch in her right ear. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. "That's not possible." "What?" Ellie glanced at him. "That ear marking. I've seen it before." Jack lowered his binoculars, his mind racing back 5 years. "My first year here, we intercepted poachers with 3 lion cubs. 2 died, but 1 survived. A female with an ear damaged from a snare." "You think that's her?" "The odds of that would be astronomical." "I named her Serena," Jack said quietly. "After my daughter." Back in Florida, Martha Wilson's arthritic fingers hovered over her iPad screen. Her small room in Sunshine Pines retirement community filled with the sounds of African wildlife from the live stream. The Serengeti National Park's educational channel had become her window to her son's world, though Jack had no idea she watched faithfully each day. "You seeing those lions again, Martha?" Harold Jenkins poked his head in, his 90-year-old frame leaning heavily on a walker. Martha's wildlife viewing had become something of a spectator sport among the residents. "Come in, Harold. They just spotted a pregnant female." Martha made room on her floral couch. "My Jack is tracking her." "Your boy still doesn't know you watch him, does he?" Harold settled beside her with a grunt. Martha shook her head, eyes fixed on the screen where Jack's Jeep appeared as a distant speck. "He'd tell me to stop worrying." That's what the last email said, 2 months ago. She didn't mention the hospital visit last week, or the oncologist's grim face as he reviewed her scans. 6 months, maybe less. Some things a son didn't need to know, not when he was half a world away with his own grief to manage. "You should tell him," Harold said, as if reading her thoughts. Martha patted his weathered hand. "Maybe. But first, I'm going to do something useful." She switched to her browser and navigated to a fundraising website. "I'm starting a campaign for lion conservation. Martha's Pride, I'm calling it." Harold raised bushy eyebrows. "And what are you going to do with your Social Security check? You can barely afford your medications." Martha's eyes twinkled with mischief. "I've got 40 years of teaching pensions and Arthur's life insurance sitting in accounts. Never touched a penny." "What am I saving it for? Funeral flowers?" At the Serengeti headquarters, Nathan Reynolds studied the new photographs Jack had sent from the field. Atlas and Serena had established territory near the abandoned ranger station, unusual behavior for lions who typically avoided human structures. "They're seeking shelter," Nathan concluded. "The female's preparing for birth." His satellite phone buzzed. an American number he didn't recognize. "Reynolds," he answered crisply. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Richard Blackwood's assistant. Mr. Blackwood's plane will arrive tomorrow at 10 a.m. He's particularly interested in tracking the lion pair your rangers have located." Nathan frowned. "How does he know about those specific lions? We haven't published that information." A pause. "Mr. Blackwood follows conservation efforts worldwide, sir. He's also prepared to make a substantial donation to your anti-poaching initiatives." "Shall I tell him you'll have someone meet his plane?" After ending the call, Nathan stared thoughtfully at the map. Richard Blackwood's interest in these specific lions struck him as odd, but with budget cuts threatening ranger salaries, they couldn't afford to alienate potential donors. As dusk approached, Jack and Ellie maintained their observation distance. Serena had grown restless, pacing in small circles before settling again in visible discomfort. "Early labor signs," Ellie noted. "Could be days yet, but we should monitor closely." Jack nodded, unable to shake the feeling of connection to this particular lioness. If this was indeed the cub he'd saved years ago, watching her prepare to continue her bloodline felt like a rare moment of completion in his broken life. His satellite phone vibrated. His mother's retirement home. Jack hesitated before answering. "Jack Wilson," he said formally. "Mr. Wilson, this is Nurse Patel from Sunshine Pines." "Your mother asked me to call. She's doing fine," the nurse added quickly, "but she wanted you to know she's started some kind of online fundraiser for lions. She's quite excited about it." Jack pinched the bridge of his nose. "She's not spending her retirement money on this, is she?" "I believe that's exactly what she's doing, sir. She says it's for Martha's pride and wanted you to know." After the call, Jack stared into the gathering darkness. His relationship with his mother had fractured after the accident that took Sarah and Emma. Martha had suggested, just once, that perhaps Jack's dedication to his wildlife veterinary practice had kept him away from home too often. The words, spoken in grief, had driven a wedge between them that 5 years and an ocean hadn't mended. That night, as Jack slept fitfully in his tent near the ranger station, the nightmares returned. Sarah's laugh, Emma's small hand in his. The phone call that came during his emergency surgery on a rhino calf, the rain-slicked roads, the drunk driver, the funeral where he stood apart from Martha, 2 islands of grief unable to reach each other. He woke gasping, dawn light filtering through canvas. Outside, Ellie was already up, binoculars trained on the lion's position. "They moved closer in the night," she reported. "She's showing more signs of distress. I think labor may be progressing faster than we anticipated." Miles away, at a small airstrip on the park's edge, a private jet touched down. Richard Blackwood emerged, silver-haired and distinguished in safari attire that seemed too pristine for the field. At 62, his reputation as a conservation photographer had earned him access to wildlife reserves worldwide, his images raising millions for protection efforts. What few knew was how those images also served as intelligence for more lucrative enterprises. "Mr. Reynolds." Blackwood extended his hand to Nathan with practiced charm. "A pleasure to finally meet in person. Your work here is exemplary." "Thank you for your interest in our park," Nathan replied carefully. "I understand you're particularly interested in our recent lion sighting." Something flickered behind Blackwood's smile. "Word travels fast in conservation circles. A pregnant lioness from the Masai Mara bloodline, that's significant." As they drove toward headquarters, Nathan couldn't shake his unease. Richard Blackwood knew too much, seemed too focused on these specific lions. That evening, as the African sun painted the sky in spectacular oranges and reds, Jack observed Serena through his night vision equipment. The lioness was clearly uncomfortable, her early labor progressing. Atlas maintained a vigilant perimeter. occasionally approaching to nuzzle his mate before resuming his patrol. Jack's phone vibrated with a text from Nathan. Blackwood arrived. "Wants to join your tracking tomorrow, be advised." In Florida, Martha Wilson sat up late, watching her fundraiser grow with surprising momentum. Harold had mentioned it to his grandson, who worked for a social media company. The young man had shared it with several wildlife conservation groups, and suddenly, Martha's pride was gaining traction. $7,520 already, Martha marveled, scrolling through the donations. One name caught her attention, a $5,000 contribution from R. Blackwood with the comment, "In memory of Alice Blackwood, who also loved lions." The name triggered something in Martha's memory, but exhaustion clouded her mind. As she prepared for bed, her computer pinged with a video call request from an unknown account. Curious, she accepted. "Mrs. Wilson?" A silver-haired man appeared on screen, his face partially shadowed. "Richard Blackwood here. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I was quite touched by your fundraising effort." Martha adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Blackwood, the photographer, how kind of you to donate. I'm actually in Serengeti now, near where your son works." Blackwood smiled. "Small world, isn't it? I recognized the Wilson name immediately." Something in his tone made Martha uneasy. "You know Jack?" "Not personally, but his reputation precedes him." "Mrs. Wilson, I have a proposition. Would you allow me to feature your fundraiser in my next documentary? I think your story, a mother supporting her son's conservation work from across the world, could inspire many." The conversation left Martha unsettled, though she couldn't pinpoint why. After ending the call, she took her evening medications, wincing at the pain that had become her constant companion. The oncologist's words echoed, 6 months with treatment. The cancer has spread too far for curative measures. She hadn't told Jack, wouldn't tell him. Not now, when he seemed to be finding purpose again after years of grief. As night fell over the Serengeti, Richard Blackwood sat in his luxury tent examining high-resolution images of Atlas and Serena on his laptop. His satellite phone buzzed. "Everything in position?" he asked without preamble. "Yes, sir," came the reply. "Team is on standby. Once the cubs arrive, we move in. Remember, I want them alive. The female especially. Her genetics are valuable." Blackwood closed his laptop, his gaze falling on a worn photograph on his desk, a smiling teenage girl with his eyes, her arms around a lion cub in what appeared to be a sanctuary setting. "Soon, Alice," he whispered. "Soon they'll understand what these animals really are." Dawn broke over the Serengeti with a merciless intensity, the drought having stripped the air of moisture and mercy alike. Jack Wilson wiped condensation from his binoculars, focusing on Serena's increasingly restless movements. The lioness paced in tight circles, stopping occasionally to paw at the ground near a dense thicket. Classic nesting behavior. "She's getting close," Ellie murmured, making notes on her tablet. "Heart rate elevated, respiratory distress evident. I'd estimate active labor within hours." Jack nodded, concern etching deeper lines around his eyes. "Atlas hasn't left to hunt. That's unusual. Males typically distance themselves during birth." "He senses something's wrong," Ellie replied, her voice dropping. "And I think he's right. Look at her gait. She's favoring her right side, and that discharge doesn't look normal." Through the powerful zoom of his camera, Jack could see the lioness was indeed struggling, her powerful body betraying signs of distress that transcended normal labor. A knot formed in his stomach, the same instinctive dread he'd felt as a wildlife veterinarian when an animal's life hung in precarious balance. "What are our options?" he asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it spoken aloud. Ellie's professional demeanor slipped, revealing genuine anguish. "Without intervention, she'll likely lose the cubs. and given her condition, possibly her own life. The radio crackled between them. "Base to Wilson. Come in." Nathan's voice carried an unusual edge. "Wilson here." "Go ahead." "Blackwood's insisting on joining your position. Says he wants to document the birth for his conservation series. I've stalled him, but he's persistent." Jack and Ellie exchanged glances. "Negative, Base. The female's in distress. We're maintaining minimum presence to avoid additional stress." "Copy that. I'll redirect him." A pause. "And Jack, something feels off about this guy. Watch your back." As Nathan ended the transmission, he turned to face Richard Blackwood, who stood in the doorway of the communications room, an inscrutable expression on his weathered face. "I'm afraid we'll need to postpone your filming, Mr. Blackwood," Nathan said evenly. "The situation has become medically sensitive." Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "All the more reason to document it, wouldn't you say? The realities of conservation aren't always pretty, but they tell the most compelling stories. Our priority is the animal's welfare, not compelling storytelling," Nathan replied, his military bearing becoming more pronounced. "Of course," Blackwood nodded pleasantly. "Perhaps I could observe from a distance. I have specialized equipment that wouldn't disturb them." As the men engaged in their battle of wills 5,000 miles away, Martha Wilson sat in her doctor's office, receiving news that sent her world tilting on its axis. "The latest scans show accelerated growth," Dr. Patel explained gently, pointing to shadowy masses on the illuminated screen. "I'm sorry, Martha, but we need to discuss comfort care options. 3 months, possibly 4 with aggressive treatment." Martha stared at the scan, not seeing the evidence of her mortality, but rather the ticking clock it represented. "And without treatment?" The doctor hesitated. 6 weeks, perhaps 8, but the quality of— "I understand." Martha straightened her shoulders, the same stubborn set Jack had inherited. "No treatment. Mrs. Wilson, I strongly advise you to reconsider. The medications could give you valuable time to what, doctor? Lie in a hospital bed? Watch the ceiling fan spin?" Martha's voice softened. "I have other plans for whatever time I have left." Returning to Sunshine Pines, Martha found Harold waiting anxiously in the community room, surrounded by a cluster of residents. "There she is." Harold waved her over. "Martha, your lion thing has gone viral. Betsy's grandson put it on that TikTok and some wildlife celebrity shared it." Martha blinked in confusion as they guided her to a computer. Her modest fundraiser, Martha's Pride, had exploded overnight. The total now showed $127,893 and climbing. "I don't understand," she whispered, scrolling through hundreds of comments and shares. Betsy, a spry 82-year-old with a passion for technology, pointed to a video embedded in the page. "This influencer person made a whole thing about you. Elderly teacher's last wish to save lions. Her son protects. 7 million views since yesterday." Martha watched in stunned silence as her private mission became a public movement. The video showed pictures of Serengeti lions interspersed with Martha's fundraiser details, all set to emotional music. The narrator spoke about Martha Wilson, retired biology teacher, using her savings to protect the wildlife her estranged son dedicated his life to studying. "But I never told anyone about Jack, or that we were—" Martha's voice trailed off as a sickening realization dawned. Only one person knew those details and had the media connections to make this happen: Richard Blackwood. Back in the Serengeti, conditions were deteriorating rapidly. The day's heat had built to an oppressive intensity, and dark clouds gathered on the horizon, the potential first rain in months, but promising a violent delivery. More concerning was Serena's condition. The lioness had retreated deeper into the thicket, her painful vocalizations carrying across the savanna. Atlas paced agitatedly, occasionally responding with low, rumbling calls that seemed to comfort his mate. 48 hours of labor with no progression, Ellie said grimly, reviewing her notes. In a domestic situation, we'd be performing an emergency C-section by now. Jack ran a hand through his hair, decision weighing heavily on him. If we don't intervene, we lose her and the cubs. If we do intervene, we risk Atlas attacking, not to mention the trauma to Serena. Ellie placed a hand on his arm. Jack, I know what she means to you, but this isn't a managed sanctuary. This is wild nature. Jack's satellite phone vibrated, another call from Sunshine Pines. With a sigh, he answered, "This isn't a good time." "Jack?" His mother's voice, frailer than he remembered, stopped him cold. "I need to tell you something important." "Mom, I'm in the middle of a situation here. Can I call you?" "It's about Richard Blackwood," Martha interrupted. "He's not who he claims to be." Jack's attention sharpened. "What do you know about Blackwood?" "We worked together years ago before you were born." Martha's voice shook slightly. "Richard was a brilliant wildlife biologist, but something happened. His daughter Alice was killed during a sanctuary visit, a lion attack. He disappeared from conservation circles after that." Jack's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. "Why is he here, Mom? What does he want?" "I don't know exactly, but—" Martha hesitated. "Jack, he's using me somehow. He's turned my small fundraiser into this huge viral campaign, and he knows things about us, about our estrangement, that I never made public." As the implications settled, Ellie touched Jack's shoulder, pointing urgently toward the lions. Serena had emerged from the thicket, collapsing in the open, her sides heaving with increasingly weak efforts. "We're out of time," Ellie whispered. "She's failing." "Mom, I have to go," Jack said quickly. "Lock down your fundraiser if you can. Don't trust Blackwood." "I'll call you as soon as I can." As Jack ended the call, the decision crystallized. "I'm going in." Ellie grabbed his arm. "Jack, that's suicide. Atlas won't let you anywhere near her." "I saved her once," Jack replied, already gathering medical supplies. "She might remember. It's the only chance she has." At the park headquarters, Nathan received an urgent call from the perimeter security team. "Sir, we've detected unauthorized vehicles entering through the north boundary. 3 Land Rovers, heavily equipped." Nathan's blood ran cold. "Poachers?" "Negative, sir. They have park permits, issued by the director's office." The ranger's confusion was evident. "But we didn't authorize any expeditions today." Nathan immediately tried to reach Jack, but communication had degraded with the approaching storm. Grabbing his rifle and radio, he headed for his vehicle, only to find Richard Blackwood blocking his path. "Going somewhere, Mr. Reynolds?" Blackwood asked pleasantly. "There are unauthorized vehicles in my park," Nathan stated flatly. "I need to investigate." Blackwood nodded understandingly. "My documentary team, I'm afraid. I took the liberty of arranging permits through your regional office. I do apologize for the confusion." "Your team needs to exit the park immediately. We have a wildlife emergency situation." "Ah, yes, the Lioness." Blackwood's facade slipped slightly, revealing something harder beneath. "That's precisely what they're positioned to document. The circle of life isn't always kind, is it?" The veiled threat wasn't lost on Nathan. "What exactly are you planning to document, Mr. Blackwood?" In Florida, Martha Wilson had gathered an unlikely war council in the Sunshine Pines community room. Harold, Betsy, and a half-dozen other residents huddled around computers and phones. "Richard Blackwood deleted my administrator access to the fundraiser," Martha explained, frustration evident. "He's somehow taken control of the whole campaign." "That can't be legal," protested Betsy, glasses perched on her nose as she examined the website. "My grandson's a lawyer," offered Harold. "Corporate shark in New York. Let me call him." Martha nodded gratefully, but her mind was elsewhere. On her tablet, she'd pulled up Richard Blackwood's conservation history, the accolades, the documentaries, and then the abrupt shift in tone following his daughter's death 15 years ago. His recent work focused increasingly on predator control, emphasizing the dangers large carnivores pose to human communities. What had once been reverent admiration for lions had morphed into something closer to controlled hostility. "Here," said Betsy suddenly, pointing to her screen. "Look at the fine print on the fundraiser now. All proceeds to be directed to the Blackwood Foundation for Wildlife Management. That wasn't there yesterday." Martha felt a chill. "He's using my name to fund his own organization, but why? What does he want with these specific lions?" Her question was interrupted by a ping from her tablet, a news alert from a Kenyan wildlife publication. Rare lion genetics. The last of the Maasai golden line tracked to Serengeti. The article detailed the significance of Serena's bloodline, one of the last genetically pure descendants of a subspecies known for unusual coloration and distinctive behavioral traits, the kind of genetics that would be priceless on the black market for private collectors and breeding programs. Martha's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, he's not there to document. He's there to capture." At that moment, in the Serengeti, Jack Wilson approached the distressed lioness with measured steps. The medical kit in his hands contained emergency birth interventions, medications that could either save Serena or push her failing body past the point of return. Atlas had momentarily left his mate's side to confront a small herd of antelope that had wandered too close, giving Jack a narrow window of opportunity. "Easy, girl," he murmured, maintaining eye contact with Serena as he inched forward. "Remember me? I pulled that wire from your ear when you were just a cub." The lioness's amber eyes tracked him, pain evident but no aggression. Her breathing had become shallow, her powerful body trembling with exhaustion from the prolonged, unsuccessful labor. Behind him, Ellie maintained radio contact with headquarters. "Nathan's on his way. ETA 20 minutes. He says Blackwood's people are in the park." Jack nodded almost imperceptibly, not breaking his careful approach. When he was within 10 feet of Serena, he slowly knelt, making himself smaller, less threatening. "I'm going to help you," he said softly, the way he'd spoken to frightened animals throughout his veterinary career. Just like before. To Ellie's astonishment, Serena's eyes remained fixed on Jack, but her body relaxed slightly, as if in recognition or resignation. When Jack finally reached her side and gently placed a hand on her heaving flank, the lioness made no move to attack. "Incredible," Ellie breathed into the radio. "She's accepting his touch. I've never seen anything like it." Jack worked quickly, assessing Serena's condition through practiced hands. "Cubs are malpositioned," he called to Ellie. "I'm going to administer oxytocin to strengthen contractions, but I may need to manually assist." As he prepared the injection, a distant roar signaled Atlas's imminent return. Time was running out. Jack administered the medication, then positioned himself to assist with the birth if necessary. "Jack!" Ellie's urgent whisper cut through the air. "We've got company." 3 Land Rovers approached from the north, dust clouds billowing behind them. Through his peripheral vision, Jack could see camera equipment mounted on the vehicles, but also the unmistakable shape of tranquilizer guns. In that moment, as storm clouds gathered overhead and danger approached from multiple directions, Jack Wilson made his choice. He would not abandon Serena again. Jack Wilson sat in the sterile hospital corridor, his body exhausted but his mind racing. 48 hours had passed since his mother's heart attack. 48 hours of surgeries, stabilization, cautious medical updates, and desperate prayers. The journey from Tanzania had been a blur of connections, delays, and anxious silence, his satellite phone clutched in his hand, waiting for any news of Martha's condition. "Mr. Wilson?" Dr. Peterson emerged from the ICU, his face revealing nothing. "Your mother is awake. She's asking for you." Jack stood, steadying himself against the wall. "How is she?" "Remarkably stable, considering everything." The doctor's professional demeanor softened slightly. "The heart attack was severe, but we've managed to stabilize her cardiac function. However, the underlying cancer remains. I want to be clear about that." Jack nodded, swallowing the familiar lump of grief that had taken up residence in his throat. "I understand. Can I see her now?" Inside the ICU room, Martha Wilson appeared impossibly small against the white hospital linens, a constellation of monitors and tubes surrounding her bed. Yet her eyes, those familiar, intelligent eyes that had watched over Jack's childhood, were alert and focused as he entered. "Jack," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You came." "Of course I came." He took her frail hand in his, alarmed at how light it felt, like holding a bird's wing. "Why didn't you tell me about the cancer, Mom?" Martha attempted a dismissive wave that her weakened body couldn't quite complete. "And interrupt your work. You were finding your way back to yourself in Africa. I wouldn't take that from you. But all this time, 6 months, you've been fighting this alone." "Not alone." Martha's lips curved in a slight smile. "Harold and the Sunshine Pines crew have been quite the support system. And I've been watching you every day through those park live streams." Speaking of which, her eyes brightened with scientific curiosity. "Tell me about Serena and her cubs. Are they thriving?" Jack marveled at his mother's ability to prioritize wildlife conservation even while tethered to life support. It was so quintessentially Martha that he couldn't help but smile. "They're doing remarkably well. Ellie says the cubs are the healthiest she's seen despite the difficult birth. And Serena—" He paused, still processing the extraordinary events himself. "Mom, she's demonstrating behaviors that defy everything we understand about wild lions. She's actively seeking human observation, bringing her cubs to the ranger station doorway like she's showing them to us." Martha's eyes gleamed with excitement that transcended her physical weakness. "The transgenerational memory. I knew it." She attempted to sit up, triggering alarms on her monitors. "Easy, Mom," Jack cautioned, gently easing her back. "What do you mean?" "What transgenerational memory?" As a nurse hurried in to check the monitors, Martha grabbed Jack's hand with surprising strength. "The research station where Serena is nesting. It was my outpost, Jack, where I studied B7 in the 70s. The Lioness, with the distinctive genetic marker for human recognition. The one Richard and I documented before." She stopped, catching her breath. "Before you left research to raise me," Jack finished quietly. Martha nodded, her eyes growing distant with memory. "B7 was extraordinary. She could distinguish between individual researchers, demonstrated trust behaviors unprecedented in wild lions. Richard thought I was anthropomorphizing, but I was certain there was a genetic component to her behavior. When your father died and I had to bring you home to America, I left all that research behind." The pieces suddenly connected in Jack's mind. The found research tags, Serena's unusual behavior, Blackwood's obsession with this particular lion bloodline. Serena is B7's descendant, and she inherited those same behavioral traits. "Exactly." Martha's excitement caused another spike in her heart rate monitor. "It's the proof I never lived to document. Behavioral traits passing through generations, specifically the capacity for cross-species recognition and trust." "You're talking about it like you're already gone, Mom," Jack said, his voice catching. "You're still here, and once you're stronger, we can get you to Tanzania to see it yourself." Martha's expression softened with maternal wisdom. "Jack, my darling boy, always trying to fix things beyond your control." She patted his hand. "The doctors have been very clear about my prognosis. The cancer has spread too far." This heart attack was just a preview of what's coming. But there are treatments, clinical trials. I've made my peace with this, Martha interrupted firmly. What matters now is what we do with the time we have left, and I intend to use it completing what I started 40 years ago. Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming video call from Ellie. He answered, angling the screen so Martha could see. "Jack, we've made an incredible discovery," Ellie's excited voice filled the room. "Serena has been taking her cubs into a hidden cave behind the ranger station. Nathan found old research markers inside from the 1970s. Martha leaned forward eagerly despite her weakness. "B7's markers. I carved observation notations into that cave wall." Ellie's expression shifted to confusion, then astonishment as she registered Martha's presence. "Mrs. Wilson, you were the original researcher?" "Dr. Wilson, actually," Martha corrected with a hint of her old spirit. "B7 was my primary research subject from 1976 to 1979. I was studying intelligence and recognition patterns in lions when life intervened." The revelation created a moment of stunned silence, broken by Nathan's voice off camera. "We found something else you both need to see." The camera shifted to show the cave entrance where Serena lay with her cubs. As they watched, the lioness deliberately rose and approached a section of wall, reaching up to touch specific markings with her paw, the very spot where Martha had carved her research notes decades earlier. "That's impossible," Ellie whispered. "She's deliberately interacting with the markings." "Not impossible," Martha replied, tears filling her eyes. "Just undocumented." Until now. The significance of the moment, this connection across species and time, hung in the air between Tanzania and Florida, between mother and son, between past research and present vindication. "Jack," Martha said suddenly, her voice taking on new urgency, "I need to speak with Richard. He needs to see this." "Blackwood. Mom, he tried to capture Serena and her cubs. He's facing criminal charges." "Because he's been operating under a fundamental misunderstanding about predator nature, one that I might have corrected if we'd stayed in contact." Martha's scientific mind was fully engaged now, her illness temporarily forgotten in the excitement of discovery. "Richard needs to see that his daughter's death wasn't evidence that all predators are mindless killers. Some lions, specifically B7's lineage, have an extraordinary capacity for discernment and trust." Jack hesitated, torn between protecting his mother's fragile health and honoring her scientific passion. "I'll see what I can arrange, but you need to rest now." As if on cue, Dr. Peterson returned to check Martha's vitals, frowning at the elevated readings. "That's enough excitement for now, Mrs. Wilson. You need to let your heart rest." "It's Dr. Wilson," Jack corrected automatically, earning a grateful smile from his mother. Later that evening, through a series of urgent calls and Nathan's intervention with Tanzanian authorities, a supervised video connection was established with Richard Blackwood. The silver-haired former conservationist appeared on the screen, his composed facade cracked by genuine shock at seeing Martha's condition. "Martha," his voice broke slightly. "They told me you were ill, but I didn't realize—" "Hello, Richard," she replied with surprising strength. "It's been a long time." "Too long." Remorse shadowed his features. "Martha, I'm so sorry about everything that's happened." "We don't have time for that now," Martha dismissed with characteristic focus. "Richard, I need you to see something. Nathan is going to show you Serena and her cubs." The screen split to show the live stream from the ranger station. As the camera focused on Serena and her 3 cubs, visible shock passed across Blackwood's face. "That ear marking," he whispered. "It's identical to B7's." "Her direct descendant," Martha confirmed, "and she exhibits the same recognition behaviors we documented, the same trust in specific humans, the same ability to distinguish intention." Blackwood stared at the screen, scientific curiosity visibly battling with entrenched grief. That's not possible, Martha. These are wild predators, driven by instinct, not— Look at her, Richard, Martha interrupted firmly. Really look. She's deliberately showing her cubs to the researchers. She's returning to the exact cave where B7 was studied. She's touching the markings we carved 40 years ago. As if to emphasize her point, the live stream showed Serena gently nudging her smallest cub toward the camera, an unmistakable display of trust that defied conventional understanding of wild predator behavior. This is what we were studying before Alice died, Martha continued gently. The capacity for cross-species recognition and trust. Not every lion has it, just as not every human has empathy. But some do. B7 did, and her descendant Serena does. The truth hung between them, undeniable in the evidence before their eyes. Serena's behavior, the rediscovered research tags, the genetic line connecting back to Martha's original subject, all pointing to a scientific breakthrough that had been buried under personal tragedy. It should have been our legacy, Martha said softly. This discovery, not a vendetta against nature. For the first time in 15 years, Richard Blackwood truly looked at a lion without the filter of his grief. On the screen, Serena gazed back, amber eyes somehow connecting with his across thousands of miles. B7's descendant, he whispered, scientific wonder temporarily overcoming anguish after all this time. Our work wasn't finished, Richard, Martha said, but Jack and Ellie can continue it now, the right way, with protection, not control. The monitoring equipment around Martha's bed began to alarm as her vitals weakened, the emotional and physical exertion taking its toll. Jack pressed the call button urgently as his mother's grip on his hand loosened. "Mom, save your strength," he pleaded. Martha shook her head slightly. "No time for that, Richard," she addressed the screen again. "Promise me, help them understand what we discovered. Use your influence for protection, not destruction." Blackwood's resistance crumbled visibly, decades of scientific integrity reasserting itself through layers of grief. "I promise, Martha, for Alice, for science, for the truth of what we found." As medical staff rushed in, Martha looked at Jack with fierce determination. "My work, your work, one line, unbroken." Then Martha Wilson closed her eyes as doctors fought to stabilize her failing heart. In the chaos that followed, Jack found himself pushed to the corridor, watching through the glass as medical professionals worked frantically to save his mother. His phone buzzed with a message from Ellie. "Third cub gaining strength. Serena still displaying unprecedented trust behaviors. We're naming smallest cub Martha, sending strength to you both." Jack leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the convergence of past and present, of endings and beginnings, of broken relationships healing across species and continents and time. And his mother's words echoed in his mind, one line, unbroken. In Tanzania, beneath the vast African sky, a lioness with a distinctive notched ear lay watching the stars, 3 cubs nestled against her side. In Florida, beneath the harsh hospital lights, a son kept vigil for the mother he had nearly lost twice, once to estrangement and now potentially to death. 2 families, connected by an unseen thread of recognition that stretched across decades and continents. A thread that Martha Wilson had discovered, Jack had protected, and Serena had somehow, impossibly, remembered. Thunder rolled across the Serengeti plains as the first heavy raindrops fell, breaking the months-long drought with dramatic emphasis. Jack hunched protectively over Serena's trembling form, his shirt already soaked with a mixture of rain, sweat, and the lioness's birth fluids. The first cub, tiny, wet, and motionless, lay in his hands as he desperately cleared its airways. "Come on, little one," he whispered, gently rubbing the cub's chest. "Breathe for me. Behind him, Ellie maintained a tense vigil, her attention split between the approaching vehicles and Atlas's warning growls from 50 yards away. The male lion paced anxiously, caught between defending his territory from the intruders and returning to his mate. "Jack, we've got about 2 minutes before Blackwood's team is within range," she warned, "and Atlas is getting agitated." As if responding to the urgency in her voice, the cub in Jack's hands suddenly twitched, then released a tiny, mewling cry. Relief flooded through him as the newborn began to breathe regularly, its miniature chest rising and falling with increasing strength. "That's it," Jack murmured, carefully placing the cub near Serena's head. The exhausted lioness responded immediately, her rough tongue gently cleaning her offspring despite her continuing labor pains. One down, but she's still contracting. There's at least one more. The lead Land Rover ground to a halt 70 yards away, its doors opening to reveal Richard Blackwood and 2 men carrying what appeared to be camera equipment, though Jack recognized the distinctive shape of tranquilizer rifles partially concealed within the gear. "Keep filming," Blackwood instructed loudly enough to carry across the distance. "This is exactly the conservation moment we need to document." Nathan's Jeep appeared from the opposite direction, spraying mud as it skidded to a stop. The park director emerged with his rifle ready but not raised, a statement of presence rather than immediate threat. "This area is restricted, Blackwood," Nathan called, his voice carrying the authority of his military past. "Your permits have been revoked. Leave now." Blackwood stepped forward, his silver hair gleaming wet in the downpour, expression a practiced mask of concerned professionalism. "Mr. Reynolds, we're documenting a critical wildlife moment. Surely you understand the educational value." As the men faced off, Jack focused entirely on Serena. The lioness growled in pain as another contraction seized her, stronger than before. His experienced hands felt her abdomen, detecting the malposition of the second cub. "Ellie, I need you," he called without looking up. "Second cub is breech. I'll need to manipulate the position." Ellie hesitated, glancing at the standoff between Nathan and Blackwood's crew. "Go," Nathan commanded, not taking his eyes off Blackwood. "I've got this covered." As Ellie rushed to Jack's side, Blackwood's mask slipped, revealing a flash of calculating rage quickly suppressed. He gestured subtly to his men, who began spreading out in a flanking pattern under the pretense of finding better camera angles. "You don't know what you're interfering with, Reynolds," Blackwood said, his tone hardening. "Those lions represent millions in conservation funding." "Is that what you call it now?" Nathan replied. "Because those rifles your men are carrying look like capture equipment, not cameras." In Florida, Martha Wilson sat rigidly in front of the community room computer, surrounded by fellow residents watching the scene unfold through Ellie's secretly activated live stream. The veterinarian's body camera transmitted jerky footage of the birth intervention, with Blackwood's confrontation visible in the background. "I can't believe Jack is actually touching a wild lioness," breathed Betsy, clutching Martha's hand. "Isn't he terrified?" "That's my son," Martha whispered, pride and fear warring in her voice. "When he commits to saving a life, nothing stops him." Harold leaned closer to the screen, his weathered face tense. "Those men with Blackwood, they're positioning for something. Military formation." Martha's heart pounded painfully in her chest, the stress aggravating her condition. She winced, but refused to look away from the screen. "Jack doesn't see it. He's focused on the birth." On the screen they watched as Jack carefully manipulated the second cub while Ellie administered another injection to Serena. The lioness's eyes remained fixed on Jack's face, an improbable trust evident even through the grainy footage. "What did my son do to earn that lion's trust?" Martha wondered aloud. Sometimes animals know things we don't, Harold replied quietly. They recognize a good soul. The room fell silent as the second cub finally emerged, Jack's experienced hands guiding it into the world with gentle efficiency. Unlike its sibling, this cub began moving immediately, its tiny mouth opening in a silent cry that brought tears to Martha's eyes. "Two healthy cubs," Ellie's voice came through the speakers. "It's a miracle, Jack." The tender moment shattered as Atlas released a thunderous roar and charged, not toward Jack and Ellie, but directly at Blackwood's approaching men. The camera jerked wildly as Ellie turned to witness the massive lion's defensive attack. "Get back!" Nathan shouted, his rifle now raised. "Everyone freeze!" Back in the Serengeti, chaos erupted in seconds. Atlas's charge had scattered Blackwood's men, sending them scrambling back toward their vehicles. Serena, despite her weakened state, struggled to rise, her maternal instinct to protect her newborns overriding her exhaustion. "Easy, girl," Jack soothed, placing a restraining hand on her heaving side. "They're safe. You're safe." Whether from his touch or his voice, Serena settled, though her amber eyes remained locked on the threat. The two cubs squirmed blindly against her belly, seeking milk and warmth in the driving rain. Richard Blackwood stood his ground, alone now as his men retreated. His composed facade had vanished entirely, replaced by cold fury. "You have no idea what you're protecting, Wilson," he called across the distance, "or what it cost me." Jack looked up for the first time, rain streaming down his face. "I know exactly what I'm protecting, Blackwood. Life, the same thing I've dedicated my career to." "Life?" Blackwood's laugh held no humor. "These aren't pets, Wilson. They're killers, efficient, remorseless predators that don't distinguish between poacher and innocent." "What happened to you?" Nathan asked, slowly approaching Blackwood with his rifle still raised. "You were once conservation's greatest advocate." A flash of lightning illuminated Blackwood's face, highlighting the grief etched into every line. "My daughter happened to me. 15 years ago, she volunteered at a sanctuary in Kenya. She loved lions because I taught her to love them. She trusted them because I taught her they could be trusted." Understanding dawned on Jack's face. "Alice, your daughter was Alice Blackwood." "She was feeding a rehabilitated lion," Blackwood continued, his voice hollow. "One that conservationists like you had declared safe. It took her arm first, then her throat, while she was still conscious. I watched from 20 feet away, camera in hand instead of a rifle." The rain intensified, but no one moved. Even Atlas had stilled his charge, as if sensing the human drama unfolding. "I'm sorry about your daughter," Jack said quietly. "Truly. But these lions aren't responsible for that tragedy, aren't they?" Blackwood's hand moved slightly, revealing a small remote control. "All predators eventually show their true nature. It's just a matter of circumstance." Nathan's eyes widened in alarm. "Jack, get away from the lions! Now!" Too late, Jack noticed the small devices positioned around the area. Remote-triggered shock stakes designed to drive animals in a specific direction during captures. Before he could move, Blackwood pressed the button. The devices activated with a high-pitched whine, sending both Atlas and Serena into panicked confusion. The male lion roared in pain and fury, while Serena struggled to her feet, desperately trying to gather her cubs. "Stop!" Jack shouted, lunging toward Blackwood, but Nathan held him back. "That's just the beginning," Blackwood called over the storm. "My men are already in position around your precious lions. By morning, they'll be sedated and on their way to a private facility where their genetics can be properly controlled." As if summoned by his words, 2 more vehicles appeared, approaching rapidly from the east. Jack's heart sank. until he recognized the park logo on their sides. Ranger reinforcements. In Florida, Martha's hand flew to her mouth as she watched the confrontation unfold. The live stream had drawn an audience beyond Sunshine Pines. Betsy's grandson had shared the link, and now thousands were watching worldwide. "He's going to get himself killed," Martha whispered, pain squeezing her chest as she watched Jack place himself between the agitated lions and Blackwood's men. Harold squeezed her shoulder. "That boy's got your backbone, Martha. He knows what he's doing." On screen, they watched as Serena, still weak from birth, collapsed again. The cubs mewled pitifully as rain pelted their tiny bodies. Without hesitation, Jack knelt beside the lioness, shielding the newborns with his own body. "Martha, are you okay?" Betsy asked suddenly, noticing her friend's pallor. Martha nodded automatically, though the pressure in her chest had intensified to searing pain. "I'm fine. Just worried about Jack." Back in the Serengeti, Jack made a decision that defied all wildlife management protocols. With Serena too weak to move her cubs to safety and Atlas distracted by Blackwood's men, he carefully gathered both newborns into his medical kit, converted now to an improvised carrier. "Jack, what are you doing?" Ellie hissed, crouching beside him. "Saving them," he replied grimly. "Serena's too weak to protect them, and Blackwood's men won't stop. We need to get them to the ranger station until this is over." To everyone's astonishment, Serena made no move to stop him. Instead, her exhausted eyes followed Jack's movements with what almost appeared to be trust or resignation. The ranger vehicles skidded to a halt, reinforcements spilling out with tranquilizer rifles raised. The standoff had escalated to a tense stalemate, with Blackwood's men regrouping near their vehicles. "This is an illegal capture operation," Nathan announced through a bullhorn. "All unauthorized personnel must leave the park immediately or face arrest." Blackwood's response was a cold smile. "Check your jurisdiction, Reynolds. I have permits signed by your regional director, who incidentally is very appreciative of the Blackwood Foundation's generous donations." As the confrontation intensified, Jack retreated toward the abandoned ranger station, the cub secure in his makeshift carrier. Ellie followed, continuously monitoring Serena, who had managed to rise again and was following them at a distance, her maternal instinct overcoming her weakness. Atlas, meanwhile, positioned himself between the humans and his family, his massive body tense with protective fury. The storm reached its peak intensity, lightning striking close enough to send reverberations through the ground. Inside the dilapidated ranger station, Jack carefully placed the cubs in a lined supply crate, checking their vital signs. "They're cold but stable," he told Ellie. "If we can keep them warm and get Serena in here, they might have a chance." Through the broken windows, they could see the confrontation continuing, now barely visible through the torrential downpour. Nathan and his rangers stood firm against Blackwood's team, neither side willing to back down. "How did it come to this?" Ellie whispered, gently stroking one cub's tiny head. "Conservation turning against itself?" "Grief makes people unrecognizable," Jack replied, thinking of his own years of anger after losing Sarah and Emma. "It warps everything you once believed in." A low growl from the doorway interrupted them. Serena stood there, soaked and exhausted, her eyes fixed on the crate holding her cubs. "Easy," Jack murmured, stepping aside to create a clear path between mother and offspring. "They're right here. Safe." In Florida, the live stream audience had grown to over 100,000 viewers, the unexpected drama drawing attention across social media platforms. Martha watched, transfixed, as Serena cautiously entered the ranger station, making her way to the crate where her cubs lay. "Look at that," Harold breathed. "She's letting them help her." Martha couldn't answer. The pain in her chest had become unbearable, radiating down her left arm. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision, but she refused to look away from the screen, from her son's moment of connection with the magnificent predator he'd risked everything to save. "I need to tell him," she gasped, fumbling for her phone, "before it's too late." "Martha?" Betsy's voice seemed distant. "Martha, what's wrong?" On the screen they watched as Serena gently nudged Jack's hand with her head, an unprecedented gesture of trust from a wild lioness to a human. Then Martha Wilson's world went black as she slumped forward, the phone falling from her nerveless fingers. "Nurse!" Harold shouted, catching Martha before she hit the floor. "Someone get the nurse! She's having a heart attack!" In the Serengeti, unaware of his mother's crisis, Jack Wilson witnessed a moment that would redefine his understanding of the boundary between humans and wild animals. Serena, after checking her cubs, turned her amber gaze to him and deliberately pressed her massive head against his palm, not in weakness, but in what could only be described as recognition. "My God," Ellie whispered, her camera capturing the extraordinary moment. "She remembers you." Outside, the confrontation had reached its breaking point. Blackwood, seeing his opportunity slipping away, made a desperate decision. Grabbing a rifle from one of his men, he approached the ranger station alone. "This ends now," he called through the storm. "Those cubs represent the last pure genetics of a line worth millions. I won't let sentimentality destroy 15 years of planning." Nathan and his rangers moved to intercept, but Blackwood was closer to the building. Jack heard the approach and positioned himself in the doorway, blocking entry. "It's over, Blackwood," he said firmly. "Look at her. Really look. Is this the mindless killer you've convinced yourself all lions are?" Behind him, Serena lay curled around her cubs, the picture of maternal devotion rather than savage predator. For a brief moment, something flickered in Blackwood's eyes, recognition, perhaps, of the beauty he had once dedicated his life to preserving. Then his expression hardened again. "One touching moment doesn't change their nature. Step aside, Wilson." "No." Jack stood his ground, unarmed but resolute. "You'll have to shoot me first." The standoff stretched for an eternal moment, rain pouring between them, two men shaped by loss and grief, now at the breaking point over the fate of a lion family. Blackwood raised the rifle. Lightning split the sky, momentarily illuminating Blackwood's face, a mask of grief calcified into determination. The rifle barrel wavered slightly, rain streaming down its length as he aimed at Jack. 15 years. Blackwood said, his voice barely audible above the storm. 15 years I've lived with the sound of my daughter's screams. Do you have any idea what that's like, Wilson? Jack didn't flinch. 5 years since I heard the police tell me my wife and daughter died instantly, that they didn't suffer. 5 years knowing they lied to spare me. Something shifted in Blackwood's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, of a pain that mirrored his own. The rifle lowered a fraction of an inch. "Then you understand," he continued, an almost pleading quality entering his voice. "These animals don't deserve our protection. They don't understand mercy or compassion." Behind Jack, Serena rose unsteadily to her feet, her cubs mewling beneath her. The lioness moved forward, placing herself beside Jack in the doorway, her amber eyes fixed on Blackwood. "Look at her, Richard," Jack said quietly. "Really look. Is this your daughter's killer?" Blackwood's composure cracked, his face contorting with anguish. "They're all the same. Predators hiding behind beautiful faces." "No," Jack countered, his voice steady. "They're individuals, just like people. Capable of violence, yes, but also of recognition, of memory, of trust." Nathan's voice cut through the rain. "Put the weapon down, Blackwood. It's over." The park director stood 20 feet away, rifle trained on Blackwood. Behind him, a line of rangers had formed, cutting off any retreat to the vehicles. "You're surrounded," Nathan continued. Whatever you planned, it failed. Don't compound the tragedy. For one breathless moment, the outcome hung in balance. Blackwood's finger still on the trigger, his eyes locked with Jack's. Decades of conservation work balanced against a father's unbearable grief. Then, with a sound that was almost a sob, Blackwood lowered the rifle. "She had your eyes," he said brokenly. "Alice, brown with gold flecks. She was photographing cubs when it happened. Said she wanted to follow in my footsteps." The revelation hit Jack like a physical blow. Not just a conservationist's daughter, a young woman with dreams, with a future, reduced now to a haunting absence that had twisted her father's life into this dark mirror of his former self. As Nathan's Rangers moved in to secure Blackwood, a satellite phone buzzed insistently in Jack's pocket. With shaking hands he retrieved it, still watching as the officers led Blackwood toward their vehicles. "Wilson," he answered, voice rough with emotion. "Mr. Wilson." "This is Nurse Patel from Sunshine Pines." The woman's voice was tight with controlled urgency. "It's your mother, sir. She's had a heart attack while watching some kind of live video of you. The paramedics are with her now, but it's serious. She's asking for you." The world seemed to tilt beneath Jack's feet. "My mother? Is she—" "She's stable for now, but the doctors are concerned. The cancer has weakened her heart significantly." "Cancer?" Jack repeated numbly. "What cancer?" A pause. "Sir, I thought you knew. Your mother was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 3 months ago. She declined treatment." The revelation struck him like a second lightning bolt. His mother was dying, had been dying, and had told him nothing. All while watching him from afar, raising money for his cause, maintaining the connection he had been too stubborn to nurture. "I need to talk to her," Jack said urgently. "Right now. She's being transported to Tampa General. I can have the ambulance staff call you when she's stable enough to talk." Jack ended the call, mind racing. Commercial flights from Tanzania would take at minimum 24 hours, time his mother might not have. Ellie approached, concern evident in her expression. "Jack, what's wrong?" "My mother," he managed, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. "Heart attack. She's been watching us somehow, some live stream, and she has cancer, terminal cancer she never told me about." Understanding dawned on Ellie's face, followed quickly by guilt. "The live stream, that was me. I've been recording everything for research. It automatically uploads to a cloud server. I had no idea she was watching." Under different circumstances, Jack might have been angry about the unauthorized recording. Now it seemed trivial compared to the time bomb that had been ticking in his mother's body while he maintained their Cold War of silence. "I need to get to Florida," he said, already moving toward the vehicles. "I need to charter a flight, anything." Nathan intercepted him, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "My brother-in-law flies for Emirates. Let me make a call. We'll get you there." As the men conferred, Ellie remained with Serena and her cubs, marveling at the lioness's calm acceptance of human presence so soon after birth. The storm was beginning to ease, the torrential downpour softening to a gentle rain that washed the savannah clean. "I've never seen anything like this," she murmured to Nathan when he returned. "She's completely at ease with us near her cubs. It defies everything we know about wild lion behavior." Nathan's expression was thoughtful. "Not everything. My grandfather would say some animals see beyond our surface, into our intentions, our hearts." Ellie smiled sadly. "I wish Jack could stay to witness this. After everything he did to save them." "Life rarely gives us perfect moments," Nathan replied. "Right now, Jack needs to save something even more precious." In the back of a ranger vehicle, Richard Blackwood sat with his head in his hands. The fight drained from him. The radio nearby crackled with updates. His team detained, their equipment confiscated, permits invalidated by calls from the ministry's headquarters. 15 years of planning, undone in a single storm-drenched confrontation. The irony wasn't lost on him. How his quest to control the species he blamed for his daughter's death had ultimately led to this moment of defeat. Through the rain-streaked window, he could see Wilson conferring urgently with Reynolds, their conversation punctuated by rapid gestures toward the vehicles. Something had happened, something beyond the lion drama that had just unfolded. A ranger approached, opening the door beside him. "Mr. Blackwood, Mr. Wilson wants a word before he leaves." Curiosity overrode his humiliation. Blackwood nodded, watching as Jack approached, his tall frame bent slightly as if carrying a new weight. "My mother is dying," Jack said without preamble. "Heart attack while watching your confrontation on a live stream. She also has terminal cancer she never told me about." Blackwood blinked, unsure why Wilson was sharing this personal crisis. "She knew you," Jack continued. "Years ago, before I was born, she said you were brilliant, that something happened to change you." Recognition flickered in Blackwood's eyes. "Martha? Martha Wilson is your mother?" Jack nodded, surprise evident. "You remember her?" "Of course I remember Martha. We pioneered the first lion behavioral studies in Kenya together in the 70s. Blackwood's voice softened with memory. "She was the best field researcher I ever worked with. She left suddenly, said she had family obligations." "To raise me," Jack said quietly. "After my father died." The two men regarded each other in silence. The shared knowledge of sacrifice, Martha's career, Alice's life, Jack's family, creating an unexpected bridge between them. "I'm sorry about your mother," Blackwood finally said, sincerity breaking through his bitterness. "She deserved better than this." "So did your daughter," Jack replied. "And so did you." As Jack turned to leave, Blackwood called after him. "Wilson, the cubs, what will happen to them? They'll live free, as nature intended. We'll monitor from a distance, protect their territory from poachers." Jack paused. "That's what conservation really means. Not control, protection." In Florida, Martha Wilson fought through layers of medication-induced fog, desperately trying to remain conscious. The ambulance sirens wailed above her, paramedics moving efficiently around her gurney, their voices seeming to come from miles away. "BP dropping again. Push another milligram." Heart rate irregular. Oxygen saturation at 89%. Martha tried to focus on the young paramedic's face, hovering above her. "My son," she managed, her voice barely audible. "Need to talk to my son." "Ma'am, we're doing everything we can. Try to stay calm." But calm was impossible. The last image burned into her consciousness was Jack standing beside that magnificent lioness, both of them facing down Blackwood. Her son had become the man she'd always hoped he would be. Brave, principled, connected to the natural world she had loved before motherhood claimed her priorities, and she had never told him how proud she was. "Phone," she insisted, weakly raising her hand. "Please." The female paramedic exchanged glances with her partner, then nodded. "Just for a moment. Try not to get too excited." Martha's arthritic fingers fumbled with the device, muscle memory guiding her to Jack's number. The connection seemed to take forever, each ring driving her heart rate higher on the monitors. "Mom?" Jack's voice finally came through, tight with worry. "Mom, I'm coming. I'm getting on a plane as soon as—" "Jack?" she interrupted, strength fading. "The lions, are they safe?" A pause, then a sound that might have been a choked laugh or a sob. "Yes, Mom. Serena and her cubs are safe. We stopped Blackwood." "Good," she whispered. "That's good. I always knew you'd protect them. Mom, listen to me. You need to hold on. I'm coming to you. We have so much to talk about. Martha smiled faintly, though he couldn't see it. You've become exactly who you were meant to be, Jack. I gave up field work to raise you, and I never regretted it for a moment. Why didn't you tell me about the cancer? Jack's voice broke. All this time. Because you needed to heal there, not tend to a dying old woman here. Martha's voice strengthened briefly. I've been watching you, Jack. Every day, through the park's feeds. I saw you coming back to life, back to the man you were before you lost Sarah and Emma. The paramedic tapped her arm, pointing to the monitors where her vital signs were becoming increasingly erratic. I have to go now, sweetheart, Martha said, fighting to keep her voice steady. They need to work on me. Mom, no, just stay on the line. I'm arranging a flight right now. I'll be there by tomorrow. Jack, listen to me, Martha insisted, sensing time growing short. Whatever happens, know that I am so proud of the man you've become. Those lions needed you, just like I needed you. Just like the world needs people who care enough to stand between destruction and creation. The phone slipped from her fingers as darkness encroached at the edges of her vision. The last thing Martha Wilson heard was her son's voice, calling her name with increasing desperation. In Tanzania, Jack stared at his silent phone, the connection broken. Nathan placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. The charter flight is arranged. We leave for Dar es Salaam in 30 minutes, then you're on a direct flight to New York connecting to Tampa. Jack nodded mechanically, his mind still with his mother in that ambulance thousands of miles away. How had they wasted so much time on silence? How had he allowed his grief for Sarah and Emma to blind him to the precious relationship still remaining in his life? What about Serena and the Cubs? He asked, forcing himself to focus on immediate concerns. Ellie will oversee their care, Nathan assured him. We've established a protective perimeter. Blackwood's men are in custody. The Cubs are nursing successfully. As if summoned by their conversation, Ellie approached from the ranger station where Serena had established her temporary den. Jack, you need to see this before you go, she said urgently, gesturing for him to follow. Inside the dilapidated building, Serena lay curled around her cubs, who nursed vigorously despite their traumatic entry into the world. The Lioness raised her head as Jack entered, her amber eyes tracking his movement without fear. Watch, Ellie whispered, stepping back. To Jack's astonishment, Serena rose and approached him, her massive head bumping gently against his hand in a gesture startlingly similar to domestic cat behavior, but unprecedented in wild lions. She then returned to her cubs, but not before looking back at him with what could only be described as expectation. She wants you to see them, Ellie explained, wonder evident in her voice. I've never witnessed anything like it. It's like she's showing them to you. Introducing them. Jack knelt slowly, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough to see the two tiny cubs clearly. Their eyes were still sealed shut, their spotted infant coats wet from their mother's grooming. A male and female, Ellie said quietly. Both healthy, despite everything. Good, Jack managed, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. That's good. As he turned to leave, to begin the journey to his mother's side, Jack felt the weight of connections spanning continents and species, his mother watching him from afar, Serena trusting him with her most vulnerable moment, two families fighting for survival in their own ways. Keep them safe, he told Ellie, until I get back. Of course, she hesitated. Jack, about your mother. I know, he said simply. Time is precious. I've wasted too much of it already. As the jeep pulled away, carrying Jack toward the airstrip, the clouds began to part, revealing patches of brilliant blue sky. The first sunlight in months touched the rain-washed savanna, transforming the landscape into a glistening emerald paradise. Behind him, unnoticed in the ranger station, Serena carried one of her cubs to the doorway, holding it gently in her massive jaws. The tiny creature squirmed as its mother set it down in a patch of sunlight, as if offering it the first blessing of a new world, one where humans and lions had forged an improbable connection that transcended the natural order. A connection born from one man risking everything to help a lioness bring new life into the world. The transatlantic flight stretched endlessly, each minute an eternity, as Jack stared at the blank screen of his phone. At cruising altitude, there was no way to know if his mother still breathed, if her heart still beat, if she was fighting to stay alive until he reached her side. The uncertainty was its own form of torture. "Can I get you anything, sir?" The flight attendant's practiced smile faltered at the naked anguish on Jack's face. "No, thank you." He turned back to the window, watching clouds pass beneath the wing, each one carrying him closer to Tampa but feeling impossibly slow. In the seat pocket before him, a photograph, creased and worn from handling, showed a younger Martha Wilson kneeling beside a lion cub, her face alight with scientific curiosity and wonder. Nathan had given it to him just before boarding, found in Blackwood's confiscated belongings. On the back, faded handwriting, Martha with subject B7, Masai Mara, 1978, The Future of Conservation. The irony wasn't lost on Jack. His mother had pioneered the very research that had shaped his own career path, had worked alongside the man who had nearly destroyed everything Jack fought to protect. And he had never known, never asked about her life before him, about the dream she had set aside. As the plane began its descent into New York for his connecting flight, Jack's phone buzzed with an incoming text from Ellie. "Serena and cubs stable. Something extraordinary happening. Call when you can." He had no time to respond before being ushered off the plane, racing through JFK to make his Tampa connection. The domestic flight was mercifully short, though each minute felt stretched to breaking. When they finally touched down in Florida, Jack was the first passenger off, pushing past slower travelers with mumbled apologies. Tampa General Hospital rose like a monolith against the evening sky, its windows reflecting the sunset in shades of amber, reminiscent of Serena's eyes. Jack found himself making the comparison unconsciously, two mothers fighting for life on opposite sides of the world. "Martha Wilson," he told the reception desk, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Admitted yesterday. Heart attack." The receptionist's fingers moved across her keyboard, her expression shifting subtly. "Are you family, sir?" "I'm her son, Jack Wilson." "One moment, please." She lifted a phone, speaking quietly, then nodded to Jack. "Dr. Peterson will be right down to speak with you." Those words, a doctor coming down rather than directions to a room, sent ice through Jack's veins. He'd delivered similar news to families too many times in his veterinary career not to recognize the protocol, doctor. Peterson emerged from the elevator moments later, a man about Jack's age with kind eyes, set in a face that had delivered both miracles and tragedies. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Dr. Peterson. Let's sit down." Jack remained standing. "Just tell me, is she gone?" The doctor hesitated, then shook his head. "No, but it's been touch and go. The heart attack was severe, complicated by her advanced cancer. She's been asking for you." Relief buckled Jack's knees, forcing him to take the offered seat. "She's conscious. She's talking. Intermittently. We've had to sedate her several times when her heart rate became dangerously elevated." Dr. Peterson leaned forward. "Mr. Wilson, I should prepare you. Your mother is very weak. The cancer has metastasized throughout her system. Even without the cardiac event, we would be measuring her time in weeks, not months." Jack absorbed this, nodding mechanically. "I understand. I just need to see her." "Of course." But first, the doctor hesitated. There's something unusual I should mention. Your mother has become something of a celebrity here. A video of you with some lions in Africa has apparently gone viral. The nurses tell me she was watching it when she collapsed. Jack blinked in confusion. Viral? What do you mean? Perhaps it's better if you see for yourself. Dr. Peterson led him to the elevator, pressing the button for the ICU floor. Your mother's fundraising campaign has raised over $2 million for lion conservation in the past 48 hours. The video of you helping the lioness give birth has been viewed by millions. The elevator doors opened to reveal a scene Jack could never have imagined. The ICU waiting room was filled with flowers, stuffed lions, cards, and hand-drawn pictures, many clearly created by children. A television mounted on the wall showed muted news footage of Serena and her cubs, with Jack kneeling beside them. "What is all this?" Jack asked, bewildered. "Your mother's story connected with people," Dr. Peterson explained. "The elderly woman using her savings to support her estranged son's conservation work, then suffering a heart attack while watching him risk his life to save a lion family. It's touched hearts worldwide." Jack struggled to process this as they approached the ICU. Through the glass walls he could see a frail figure in the bed surrounded by monitoring equipment. Martha Wilson had always been small in stature, but now she seemed diminished, as if the very essence of her was already fading. "She's had periods of confusion," the doctor warned. "Sometimes she thinks she's back in Africa, in her research days. Other times she's perfectly lucid." Jack nodded, steeling himself before entering the room. The antiseptic smell, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, the soft hiss of oxygen, all reminded him of the hospital where he'd identified Sarah and Emma's bodies 5 years earlier. He pushed the memory away, focusing instead on the present, on the moments that might be his last with his mother. "Mom?" he said softly, approaching the bed. Martha's eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to recognition. "Jack, you're really here?" "I'm here." He took her hand, alarmed at how light and papery it felt. "I came as fast as I could." "The lions," she whispered. "Are they safe?" Even now her first thought was for the animals. Jack felt a surge of love and regret. How much of his mother's passion had he inherited without ever acknowledging its source? "They're safe. Serena and both cubs are doing well." He pulled a chair close to the bed. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were sick? Or about your work with Blackwood?" Martha's lips curved in a faint smile. "So many things we never told each other. Too busy protecting each other from pain, I suppose." A nurse entered, checking monitors and adjusting IV lines. "Mrs. Wilson, your numbers are looking better. Having your son here seems good for you." "He's good for everyone," Martha replied with unexpected strength. "Saved those lion cubs, just like his mother taught him." The nurse smiled warmly at Jack. "Your mother's quite proud of you. She's been showing everyone the video." After she left, Jack turned back to Martha. "What video, Mom? What's happening with all this media attention?" Martha's eyes twinkled despite her weakness. "Your Dr. Thompson had a live stream running. When Blackwood confronted you, I was watching with everyone at Sunshine Pines. Harold's grandson shared it online when I collapsed. People seem to like seeing a man risk his life for lion cubs." The absurdity of it, his private conservation work becoming public spectacle, might have angered Jack under different circumstances. Now it seemed trivial compared to the time slipping away with his mother. "Why didn't you tell me about your research career?" he asked gently. "All those years I thought you were just a high school biology teacher." "I was a biology teacher," Martha corrected. "A good one. But before that," her voice drifted, eyes growing distant. "Before you were born, I was tracking lion prides with Richard. developing the first behavioral studies. We were going to revolutionize conservation approaches. What happened? Your father died. You were only 2. Martha's hand tightened fractionally around his. I couldn't raise you in field camps across Africa. You needed stability, school, a normal life. So I came home, got my teaching certificate. No regrets. The simplicity of her sacrifice, an entire career, dreams, ambitions set aside, struck Jack with painful clarity. While he had been resenting her perceived intrusion after his family's deaths, he had never truly understood the woman who had reshaped her entire life around him. I found a photograph, Jack said, retrieving the creased image from his pocket. You with a lion cub. Blackwood had it. Martha's eyes widened as she took the photo with trembling fingers. B7, she whispered. My special project. Female cub, unusually responsive to human interaction. I was studying whether certain lions had greater capacity for human recognition than others. Jack stared at her, pieces suddenly connecting. Mom, that ear notch, it's the same as Serena's. Impossible, Martha murmured, studying the photo closer. B7 would be long dead by now. Lions rarely live past 15 in the wild. Could she be a descendant? Sharing the same genetic markers you were studying? Martha's eyes lit with scientific interest, momentarily overcoming her weakness. DNA is transferred. Certain behavioral traits can pass through generations. Richard was continuing my research after I left. The effort of excitement proved too much. Martha's monitors began beeping more rapidly, her breathing becoming labored. Jack pressed the call button, and medical staff rushed in, ushering him outside while they stabilized her. In the hallway, Jack paced, the photograph still clutched in his hand. The connection seemed impossible yet undeniable. His mother's research subject from decades ago somehow linked to the very lioness he had saved, as if the trajectory of his life had been set long before he realized, circular rather than linear. His phone buzzed with a text from Ellie. Jack, call immediately. Third cub discovered. Serena trying to show us something. Need your guidance. Before he could respond, Dr. Peterson emerged from Martha's room. We've stabilized her, but these episodes tax her heart considerably. Each one leaves her weaker. How long? Jack asked, the question hanging between them. Days, maybe hours. It's impossible to say with certainty. Jack nodded, swallowing hard. Can I use my phone in there? I need to make a call to Africa, about the lions. It's important to her. Briefly, Dr. Peterson conceded, but try to keep her calm. Back at Martha's bedside, Jack dialed Ellie's number, putting the call on speaker so his mother could hear. Jack, thank God. Ellie's voice came through, backdrop filled with the sounds of the savannah. We found a third cub hidden in the ranger station wall, much smaller than the others, probably why Serena kept it separate. But that's not the most extraordinary part. Martha's eyes were fixed on the phone, her scientific curiosity visibly overriding her pain. Serena's behavior is unprecedented, Ellie continued excitedly. She's actively seeking human interaction. She brings the cubs to the doorway when rangers approach, as if showing them off, and Nathan found something remarkable under the floorboards where she's been nesting. What? Jack and Martha asked simultaneously. Old research tags from a 1970s behavioral study. Someone was using this station for lion research decades ago. Nathan thinks Serena may have been drawn here specifically because of scent markers or memories passed down through generations. Martha's hand clutched Jack's, her eyes wide. My station, she whispered. That was my research outpost. B7 was born there. Jack stared at his mother in astonishment. Ellie, what's the tag number? Can you read it? Shuffling sounds came through the speaker, then Ellie's voice, confused but compliant. B7FMM 1978. Does that mean something? Martha's monitors began beeping faster again, but this time from excitement rather than distress. That's my tag. B7's identification marker. Female, Masai Mara, 1978. But how? Jack began. Territory memory, Martha interrupted, her voice stronger than it had been since his arrival. Some lion bloodlines maintain territorial connections across generations. I was studying it when I had to leave. Richard must have continued my work, tracking the descendants. The realization struck Jack with stunning force. That's why he wanted Serena and her cubs, not just for their genetic value to collectors, but because they were the culmination of your joint research, the final proof of your theories. Put Ellie back on, Martha commanded, a flash of the formidable researcher she had once been breaking through her illness. Jack complied, watching in wonder as his dying mother began rapidly firing questions about Serena's behavior, the cub's development, the specific interactions with humans. Ellie answered as best she could, clearly stunned to be speaking with a pioneering researcher she hadn't known existed. "Dr. Wilson, this is extraordinary," Ellie said finally. "Your work from 40 years ago may have documented the first evidence of transgenerational memory in lions. Serena is essentially continuing behaviors you observed in her ancestor." "Not just behaviors," Martha corrected, her scientific mind fully engaged despite her failing body. "Recognition. B7 recognized individual humans, could distinguish between those who meant harm and those who didn't. I theorized it was an evolutionary adaptation, but Richard dismissed it as anthropomorphism." Jack's mind raced with implications. "That's why Serena let me help her. Not just because I saved her as a cub, but because she's genetically predisposed to recognize human intention." "The human-animal bond," Martha whispered, "is not a human invention. It's written in DNA, in instinct." "I always believed that." Her eyes filled with tears. "And now you've proven it, Jack, with the very descendants of my research subject." The synchronicity was almost too perfect to be coincidental, as if the universe had orchestrated this connection across decades and continents, bringing mother and son full circle through the lions they had separately worked to protect. Jack's phone chimed with an incoming video call from Nathan. He accepted, and the screen filled with an image that made both Wilsons gasp. Serena, lying in the doorway of the ranger station, 3 cubs nestled against her. As they watched, the lioness looked directly into the camera, her amber eyes seeming to peer across continents into the hospital room. "She's been doing this all morning," Nathan explained, "bringing the cubs to the doorway whenever we approach with the camera. It's like she's showing them to someone." Martha reached a trembling hand toward the screen. "Hello, beautiful girl," she whispered. "Granddaughter of my B7. Look how perfect you are." As if in response, Serena's ears perked forward, her gaze intensifying. The moment stretched across impossible distance, the dying researcher and the lioness somehow connected through technology and time. "Jack," Martha said suddenly, turning to her son with renewed urgency, "I need to tell Richard. He needs to see this, to understand what it means. His entire crusade against predators has been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of their nature. Mom, he's been arrested. He's facing criminal charges for the attempted capture. Call Nathan back. Tell him I need to speak with Richard. It's important. Perhaps the most important conversation of my career." Martha's voice held the unmistakable authority of someone who knew their time was short and wouldn't waste it on trivialities. Jack hesitated, then nodded. "I'll try." Within the hour, through Nathan's intervention and several urgent calls to authorities, a supervised video connection was established. Richard Blackwood appeared on the screen, seated in what appeared to be a detention room, his silver hair disheveled, his face haggard. "Martha?" His voice broke when he saw her condition. "My God, Martha." "Hello, Richard," she replied with surprising strength. "It's been a long time. They told me you were dying. I didn't believe it." Blackwood's composure cracked further. "I'm so sorry. For everything." "No time for that now." Martha dismissed his apology with a weak wave. "Richard, I need you to look at something. Nathan is going to show you Serena and her cubs." The screen split, showing both Blackwood and the live feed from the ranger station. As the camera focused on Serena and her 3 cubs, a visible shock passed across Blackwood's face. "Do you recognize that ear notch pattern?" Martha asked. "Look closely." Blackwood leaned toward his screen, disbelief dawning. "It can't be. That's B7's marking. Your research subject." "Her descendant," Martha confirmed. "And she exhibits the same recognition behaviors we documented. The same trust in specific humans. The same ability to distinguish intention." "That's not possible," Blackwood whispered, but his certainty was visibly wavering. "It is possible. It's happening right now." Martha's voice strengthened with conviction. "Richard, you abandoned our research because you believed I was anthropomorphizing, attributing human qualities to animals incapable of such complexity. Then, after Alice, you twisted that belief into a crusade against all predators." Blackwood flinched at his daughter's name, but Martha continued relentlessly. "But look at her, Richard. Really look. This is what we were studying, the capacity for cross-species recognition and trust. Not every lion has it, just as not every human has empathy." "But some do. B7 did, and her descendant Serena does." As if to emphasize her point, the live stream showed Serena gently nudging her smallest cub toward the camera, an unmistakable display of trust that defied conventional understanding of wild predator behavior. "My son," Martha said, reaching for Jack's hand, "risked his life based on this truth, that some connections transcend species, transcend fear. That trust can exist even between natural enemies." Blackwood's face contorted with warring emotions, scientific fascination battling with 15 years of grief-fueled hatred. "But Alice died because we didn't fully understand the limitations of that trust," Martha acknowledged gently. "Not all lions have this capacity. The one that killed her likely didn't. But destroying an entire species because of one tragedy dishonors her memory and the work she loved." The truth hung between them, undeniable in the evidence before their eyes. Serena's behavior, the rediscovered research tags, the genetic line connecting back to Martha's original subject, all pointing to a scientific breakthrough that had been buried under personal tragedy. "It should have been our legacy," Martha said softly. "This discovery, not a vendetta against nature." For the first time in 15 years, Richard Blackwood truly looked at a lion without the filter of his grief. On the screen, Serena gazed back, amber eyes somehow connecting with his across thousands of miles. "B7's descendant," he whispered, scientific wonder temporarily overcoming anguish. "After all this time." "Our work wasn't finished, Richard," Martha said. "But Jack and Ellie can continue it, the right way, with protection, not control." The monitors around Martha's bed began to alarm as her vitals weakened, the emotional and physical exertion taking its toll. Jack pressed the call button urgently as his mother's grip on his hand loosened. "Mom, save your strength," he pleaded. Martha shook her head slightly. "No time for that. Richard," she addressed the screen again, "promise me. Help them understand what we discovered. Use your influence for protection, not destruction." Blackwood's resistance crumbled visibly. decades of scientific integrity reasserting itself through layers of grief. I promise, Martha, for Alice, for science, the truth of what we found. As medical staff rushed in, Martha's gaze locked with Jack's, a lifetime of unspoken communication passing between them. My work, she whispered. Your work. One line, unbroken. Then Martha Wilson closed her eyes, a slight smile on her face, as doctors fought to stabilize her failing heart. 3 months later, Jack Wilson stood at the edge of the abandoned ranger station, watching the sunrise paint the Serengeti in hues of amber and gold. The rainy season had transformed the landscape from parched browns to vibrant greens, life flourishing in every direction. Beside him, Ellie adjusted her camera settings, capturing the first light as it touched the acacia trees where Atlas now stood guard. They'll be here soon, she said softly. They've been remarkably punctual these past weeks. Jack nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. The past months had reshaped his life in ways he could never have imagined. Grief and discovery intertwined like the DNA strands he and Ellie had been studying. Martha Wilson had survived that night, though just barely. Her heart had stopped twice, bringing her to the threshold before medical intervention pulled her back. The days that followed had been a delicate balance between hope and preparation for the inevitable. Yet somehow, against all medical predictions, his mother had stabilized. A statistical anomaly, her oncologist had called it. Not remission, but a plateau we didn't expect to see. Jack preferred the explanation offered by Harold, who visited Martha daily in her hospital room. She's got unfinished business. The good Lord knows better than to argue with a Wilson woman on a mission. The sound of an approaching vehicle drew Jack's attention. Nathan's Jeep appeared on the horizon, dust billowing behind it as it navigated the rutted track toward the station. 2 passengers were visible beside the park director. One expected, one a surprise that made Jack's breath catch. Is that? Ellie began, squinting against the morning light. Yes, Jack confirmed, emotions tangling in his chest. My mother. The Jeep rolled to a stop and Nathan emerged first, circling to help Martha from the passenger seat. At 79, still battling cancer that would eventually claim her life, Martha Wilson moved with the careful deliberation of someone conserving limited energy for important moments. But her eyes, those were unchanged, bright with intelligence and purpose as they had been in her research days. Behind them, Richard Blackwood stepped from the vehicle, his silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. His legal situation remained complicated, charges reduced but not dismissed, his freedom conditional on cooperation with conservation authorities. Today marked his first return to the field since the confrontation 3 months earlier. Jack, Martha called, her voice stronger than it had been in the hospital. Don't just stand there staring. Help your mother over this uneven ground. Jack moved forward, taking her arm gently. You shouldn't be out here, Mom. The doctor said I have limited time, Martha interrupted briskly. All the more reason not to waste it in air-conditioned hospital rooms when I could be here. Besides, she added with a wink, I have some catching up to do with an old research subject's family. As if summoned by her words, movement appeared at the edge of the tall grass. Serena emerged slowly, her powerful body moving with the fluid grace of a predator in her prime. Behind her, 3 cubs followed, no longer tiny newborns but growing rapidly, their spotted infant coats beginning to fade into tawny adolescence. Right on time, Ellie murmured, camera whirring. 7:15 a.m., just like yesterday. The extraordinary routine had developed gradually over the past months. Each morning, Serena would bring her cubs to the ranger station clearing, allowing the researchers to observe from a distance, The behavior defied conventional understanding of wild lions, yet had been documented meticulously through Ellie's research protocols. Martha's breath caught as she saw the lions. "Oh my," she whispered. "They're beautiful." Blackwood stood slightly apart, his face a complex study of emotions, scientific fascination warring with the grief that had defined him for 15 years. Since his confrontation with Jack, since seeing the evidence of Martha's theories validated, something had shifted in the man. Not healing exactly, but a redirection of his considerable intellectual energy. "The smallest one," he noted quietly. "She has the same distinctive eye marking as B7 did. The genetic expression is remarkable." "We've named her Martha," Jack said, glancing at his mother. "The other female is Ellie, and the male is Atlas Jr., though the research team just calls him AJ." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "You named one after me?" "Seemed appropriate," Jack replied with a small smile. "Stubborn, resilient, smarter than anyone gives her credit for." The group maintained a respectful distance as Serena settled into a patch of sunlight, her cubs tumbling around her in play. Atlas appeared at the perimeter, his massive form a protective presence rather than a threat to the humans he had come to tolerate. "The DNA tests confirmed it," Ellie explained, particularly for Martha and Blackwood's benefit. "Serena is a direct descendant of B7, 6 generations removed, but the genetic markers are unmistakable." "And the behavioral patterns?" Martha asked, the researcher in her emerging through her physical frailty. "Consistent with your original observations," Jack confirmed. "Specific human recognition, threat discrimination, intentional interaction. We've documented 47 distinct incidents of Serena deliberately seeking human observation of her cubs." "As if she wants us to see them," Blackwood murmured. "Or as if she's showing them to us," Martha corrected. "There's a difference. One acknowledges her agency in the interaction." The subtle distinction, characteristic of Martha's rigorous scientific thinking, brought a genuine smile to Blackwood's face. "Still keeping me honest after all these years, Martha." "Someone has to," she replied with a hint of their old camaraderie. The relationship between the former colleagues had evolved into something complex during Martha's recovery. Initial wariness had given way to cautious collaboration as Blackwood began sharing his decades of research data, much of it building on Martha's original work, though twisted by his grief into justification for control rather than protection. "The Wilson-Blackwood theory of transgenerational recognition," Ellie said, gesturing toward the lions. "That's what the journal is calling it in the upcoming publication." "Seems a bit grandiose," Martha demurred. "Not at all," Blackwood countered. "It's potentially revolutionary. The idea that certain behavioral traits, particularly those related to human interaction, can be genetically transmitted through specific lion bloodlines, challenges fundamental assumptions about wild animal behavior." Jack watched his mother's face light up with scientific passion, the same expression he'd seen in old photographs from her research days. The cancer still ravaged her body, but in moments like this her mind shone with undiminished brilliance. "The Foundation is proceeding with the sanctuary plans," Nathan informed them, changing the subject. "The ministry has approved the expanded protected zone around this territory." The Martha Wilson Foundation for Interspecies Research had emerged from the viral fundraising campaign that had captured global attention. What began as a modest effort by an elderly woman to support her son's work had transformed into a multi-million-dollar research and conservation initiative, with Martha herself guiding its scientific direction from her hospital bed. More surprising had been Blackwood's contribution, his entire fortune, directed to establish the Alice Blackwood Memorial Sanctuary spanning the territory where Serena's pride now lived. The legal arrangements had been complex, part of his plea agreement, but the result was the largest privately funded conservation area in Tanzania's history. "When will construction begin on the research center?" Martha asked Nathan. "Next month. The architects have incorporated all your specifications." Nathan smiled. "Including the observation deck positioned exactly where your original research blind was located." Martha nodded with satisfaction. "Perfect. I'll need to review the final plans before—" She stopped herself, the unspoken reality of her limited time hanging in the air. Jack squeezed her hand gently. The oncologist had revised their estimate to perhaps 6 months following her unexpected plateau, but everyone understood the reprieve was temporary. Martha had chosen to spend that time transferring her knowledge, finalizing research protocols, and witnessing the continuation of work she had abandoned decades ago to raise her son. "You'll have them tomorrow," Nathan assured her. "And the live feed system is already operational. Sunshine Pines has the first dedicated monitor installed in their community room." Martha chuckled. "Harold will be insufferable. He's become quite the amateur lion behaviorist, you know. Corrects the National Geographic documentaries now." As they spoke, Serena had risen and was approaching the humans with deliberate steps, her cubs trailing behind. The researchers automatically stepped back, maintaining the safety protocol, all except Martha, who remained seated on the portable chair Jack had brought for her. "Mom," Jack said warningly, moving to her side. "It's all right," Martha replied with calm certainty. "She's not threatening us." Serena stopped 15 feet away, regarding the humans with those intelligent amber eyes. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she nudged her smallest cub, little Martha, forward. The cub hesitated, then took several wobbly steps toward the humans before stopping, looking back at her mother uncertainly. "Oh my God," Ellie whispered, camera whirring continuously. "She's literally introducing her cub to us." Martha Wilson's eyes filled with tears. "Hello, little one," she said softly. "Aren't you beautiful?" The cub's ears perked forward at the sound of her voice. For a breathtaking moment, wild predator and elderly scientist regarded each other across species boundaries, a connection that seemed to transcend the natural order. "This changes everything," Blackwood said quietly. "Everything we thought we understood about wild animal cognition." Jack nodded, watching his mother's face illuminate with wonder. "That's what she always said you'd discover together, before life took you both in different directions." After several minutes, Serena called her cub back with a soft vocalization. The family retreated to the shade of a nearby acacia, still visible but at a more comfortable distance for both species. "I need to sit down," Martha said suddenly, fatigue evident in her voice. Jack helped her back to Nathan's jeep, concern etched on his face. "We should get you back to the lodge. You've had enough excitement for one day." "Nonsense," Martha protested, though without her usual vigor. "I've waited 40 years for this moment." "A little fatigue won't stop me now." Nevertheless, she allowed Jack to help her into the vehicle. As the others prepared to depart, Ellie and Nathan to continue their observations, Blackwood to meet with sanctuary planners, Martha reached for her son's hand. "Jack, stay with me a moment." When they were alone, Martha turned to face him fully. "I need to ask you something important." Jack tensed, recognizing the serious tone. "Anything, Mom." "When I'm gone," she began directly, "will you continue this work? Not just the conservation part. You've always done that brilliantly. But the research? Understanding these connections between humans and animals?" The question struck at the heart of decisions Jack had been avoiding. His leave of absence from the Park Service had extended indefinitely as he divided time between his mother's care in Florida and the ongoing research in Tanzania. The future remained uncharted territory. "I don't know if I have your scientific mind," he admitted. or your patience for academic protocols. Martha smiled. You have something better. You have instinct. You understood Serena's trust before you had any theory to explain it. That's rare, Jack. Rarer than academic brilliance. She gazed out at the lioness and her cubs, now resting peacefully in the growing morning light. We started something here, decades ago. Something important. Richard and I, then you, now Ellie. It shouldn't end. It won't, Jack promised. The Foundation will ensure the research continues. That's not what I mean. Martha turned back to him, her eyes sharp despite her fatigue. Science needs heart to matter, Jack. Data without compassion is just numbers. I need to know you'll be that heart. The request touched something deep in Jack, the same instinct that had driven him to approach Serena during her difficult birth, to trust the connection he felt with the lioness despite all conventional wisdom warning against it. I will, he said simply. I promise. Satisfied, Martha nodded. Good. Now, I believe Dr. Thompson has been casting rather obvious glances in your direction when she thinks no one is looking. Jack felt heat rise in his face. Mom, oh, don't mom me, Martha interrupted with a mischievous smile. I may be dying, but I'm not blind. That young woman is brilliant, dedicated, and clearly thinks my son hangs the moon. Don't waste time, Jack. If these past months have taught us anything, it's that life is precious and unpredictable. The observation, uncomfortably accurate, left Jack momentarily speechless. His relationship with Ellie had evolved during the intense research period following Serena's birth, professional respect deepening into something neither had acknowledged directly. I'll take it under advisement, he finally managed, earning a knowing look from his mother. See that you do? I'd like to know my son is in good hands before I go. The blunt reference to her mortality, typical of Martha's no-nonsense approach, twisted in Jack's chest. Despite the medical reality, he had begun to hope irrationally for more time, for a miracle that would keep his mother with him now that they had finally reconnected. Mom, don't talk like that. The doctor said you're stable for now. Martha patted his hand. Stable isn't cured, dear, and pretending otherwise wastes precious time. Now help me out of this Jeep. If I'm going to spend my remaining days studying lions, I want a better view than the inside of a vehicle. As Jack assisted his mother back to her observation chair, Ellie approached with barely contained excitement. You need to see this, she said, offering her tablet. The thermal imaging revealed something we missed. There's a small cave behind the ranger station. It looks like Serena has been using it as a secondary den. And Jack, there are markings inside. Old markings? The tablet showed infrared images of what appeared to be carvings or scratches on the cave walls. Martha leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Those are our research notations, she whispered in astonishment. Richard and I used that cave for observations. We marked the wall with pride movements, behaviors. Her voice trailed off as the implications registered. Serena found the exact location where her ancestor was studied, Jack said slowly, where you and Blackwood worked decades ago. Not just found it, Ellie corrected, excitement evident in her voice. She's actively using it, bringing her cubs there regularly. The scent markers from your research days should have degraded completely after 40 years, yet she's behaving as if she recognizes the location's significance. Martha's scientific mind engaged immediately. Transgenerational spatial memory. We theorized about it but could never prove it conclusively. Until now, Jack finished. Between the DNA confirmation, the behavioral patterns, and this spatial connection, it's unprecedented evidence. It's a legacy, Martha said softly. My research, your conservation work, connected through Serena and her cubs. The word resonated deeply. Legacy. Not just scientific discovery or conservation success, but the continuation of meaning across generations, human and lion alike. As if sensing she was being discussed, Serena appeared at the edge of the clearing again, this time alone. The lioness regarded them steadily, her amber eyes reflecting the morning sunlight. "She wants us to follow her," Martha said with absolute certainty. Jack hesitated. "Mom, it's not safe to—" "Jack!" Martha's voice held the unmistakable authority she had wielded as both researcher and mother. "Some moments matter more than safety. This is one of them." After a moment's consideration, Jack nodded. "At least let me carry you. Don't be ridiculous." "I can walk?" Martha struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on her cane. "Just stay close." With Jack and Ellie flanking her protectively, Martha Wilson began walking slowly toward Serena. The lioness waited patiently, then turned and moved toward the back of the ranger station, glancing back to ensure they were following. Nathan and Blackwood, returning from their planning discussion, froze at the sight. "What are they doing?" Nathan demanded, alarm evident in his voice. "Following a legacy," Blackwood replied softly, understanding dawning on his face. "Martha's legacy." The small procession moved carefully around the dilapidated building to where the hidden cave entrance lay partially concealed by undergrowth. Serena paused at the opening, then emitted a soft vocalization. From within, 3 small heads appeared, her cubs, who had reached the cave by another entrance. "My God," Ellie whispered, camera capturing every moment. "She's literally showing us her den. Her most vulnerable location." Martha stopped a respectful distance away, her face alight with wonder despite her physical exhaustion. "After all these years," she murmured, "the completion of a circle I never thought I'd see closed." Jack supported his mother as she stood witnessing this extraordinary moment, the culmination of a scientific journey begun 4 decades earlier and continued now through an unlikely series of connections. His own life, once fractured by grief and isolation, had somehow been rewoven into something meaningful through these magnificent predators and the restored relationship with his mother. "Worth coming all this way for?" he asked her quietly. Martha smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "Worth everything, Jack. Every moment." As the morning sun climbed higher, casting its golden light across the Serengeti, Martha Wilson stood supported by her son, watching the future of her life's work embodied in 3 playful cubs tumbling at the entrance to a cave she had once used to begin understanding the complex intelligence of Africa's great predators, a legacy preserved, a circle completed, a man who risked his life to help a lioness give birth, and in doing so helped birth something even greater, understanding across the boundaries that separate species but cannot divide the connections between living beings who recognize each other's essential nature. And in Florida, in the community room at Sunshine Pines Retirement Home, Harold Jenkins and 24 elderly residents watched the live stream in reverent silence, witnessing their friend Martha Wilson complete the journey she had begun as a young researcher, now continued through her son and the lions they both had saved. "That's our Martha," Harold said proudly, wiping a tear from his weathered cheek. "Always said she'd change how we see the world." On the screen, Martha Wilson turned toward the camera, as if sensing her friends watching from across the ocean, and smiled. Not the smile of someone facing death, but of someone who had found, at last, the completion of a life's purpose and the continuation of a legacy that would outlive her mortal days. A legacy born when a man risked his life to help a lioness give birth, and discovered that some connections transcend all boundaries, even those between predator and prey, between wild and human, between past and future. A legacy that would continue through the cubs now tumbling in the Serengeti sun, through the research center that would bear Martha's name, and through Jack Wilson, who had found his way home through the amber eyes of a lioness who somehow recognized him across the divide of species. In the breathtaking story of Jack Wilson and Serena the Lioness, we discover that life's most beautiful connections often arrive when we've lost hope. Martha Wilson reminds us that it's never too late to reclaim our passions, rebuild broken relationships, or make a difference in this world. Even in her 70s, facing terminal illness, Martha found purpose by supporting her estranged son's conservation work, proving that our wisdom and experience remain valuable at any age. The miraculous trust between a wild lioness and a heartbroken man shows that healing comes in unexpected forms when we open ourselves to connection, even across seemingly impossible divides. This extraordinary bond between species mirrors our own human need for reconciliation and understanding across the generations. Have you, like Martha, ever reconnected with a passion from your younger years that brought unexpected joy in your later life? Or perhaps like Jack, have you found healing through an unexpected connection after loss? Share your story of rediscovery or reconciliation in the comments below. Your experience might be the very inspiration someone else needs today.